Welcome to Nanyang Business School's webinar on business and sustainability. Well, sustainability is one of the key areas that Nanyang Business School focuses on in teaching and research. Sustainability is a broad and inclusive topic. Now, people look at it in different ways. For many people, sustainability is more about saving the earth. Well, for some others, it can be about cutting the cost, avoiding legal risks, or it can be a source for innovation and competitiveness. The theory often falls behind the practice. So it's important to keep up with the learning of practitioners who engage with sustainability on a daily basis. In this webinar, we're going to learn from 3 business leaders and make sense of what sustainability is like in real life. We have 3 panelists with us today, and they are at different stages of practicing sustainability through their business activities. And we have Mr. Jiacai Lao, and he's a co-founder of TreeDots. TreeDots tries to solve the food waste problem by rebuilding the relationship between suppliers, restaurants, food stores, consumers, and etc. across the value chain of the food industry. They are growing very fast and expanding into different countries. And we have Mr. Jay Ong, who is the founder of WeShine. WeShine is an early stage startup. It has a promising business model to provide better jobs for a large number of low-wage workers. And we have Mr. Helge Munko, and he is a Group Chief Sustainability Officer at DBS. He's a senior expert in sustainable finance, leading a large-scale sustainability initiative in the global firm. So putting together, our panelists will present a comprehensive picture about sustainability work at different stages and in different business contexts. And we're going to proceed as follows. Each panelist will spend a couple of minutes to share with us what sustainability means to them personally and what they do to advance sustainability in the work. And we're going to spend the rest of the time for Q&A. So please share whatever questions you have during their presentation and after the presentation, and we're going to address them in the Q&A session. So without further ado, let's start with Mr. Jiacai Lao. So Jiacai, it's over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jiacai, or you can call me JC, and I am one of the co-founder of TreeDots. So at TreeDots here, what we mainly do is actually to help upstream suppliers like importers, food manufacturers, slaughterhouses to redirect their unsold inventories to other food businesses like restaurants, cafe, caterers. And in this way, helping to prevent these products from becoming food loss and going to waste. So this is essentially what we do in TreeDots, and we operate on a B2B and B2C level, whereby food that is handed over to us can be distributed to both business channels, depending on the type of products that we receive, since that different channels has different requirements and expectations of products, where B2B is more price sensitive and B2C, which we call it group buy, is a little bit more excited about premium products. So how did we get started back then? I think each of the co-founders itself has the different backstory as to what inspired us to start TreeDots. And for myself personally, I happened to be doing exchange in Germany. So I was very influenced by the culture and the things I see there. And I think that was also the first moment where I was first in touch with sustainability in the form of like no food wastage and how to prevent food wastage from going to waste. I think as an Asian, your parents typically will share with you that, hey, you better don't waste your food on the table. And you see food waste from a very consumer perspective, whereas food waste is things that happen at a buffet line, happen at your house, and where you're not finishing the food. But in Germany, I actually seen it firsthand in supermarkets, where they have shelves of lots of unsold inventories, where they are selling at the discounted prices to consumers so that these products don't go to waste. But when you come back to Singapore, we realize that such practice is not available. And in fact, food wastage or any sustainability topic is shunned upon by a lot of Asian Asian companies. So what inspire us is that we see that there's a huge problem that we needs to solve, where we bridge the gap between traditional food supply chain businesses with the topic of sustainability. So we help them address the problem that they can't address, where they see sustainability as a taboo or a negative connotation. We help them take these products and clear off to the markets without their brand being affected. So essentially, that is what we have been doing, and we have been doing this about 4 to 5 years for now. Proud to say that we have cleared off more than about few thousand tons, and we will continue to do that. But I think what we are doing is really a small impact to what's happening around the world. So we always encourage people to start small, and even your small little action of not wasting food at a consumer level helps a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much me and TreeDots. So back to Dr. Ming.
Thank you, Jiao Cai. So actually, I think you only touch a small part of your work. So your work is very comprehensive, right? As I can tell from the website, etc. So you're moving your impact from just influencing a relatively small number of suppliers and customers to a more system level, influence in logistics and value chain and the supply chain, etc. So by the way, I just want to share with our audience that TreeDots just received $11 million A-round investment last year. So it allows you to grow fast outside Singapore. So I guess your experience of expanding the business for social good can be appealing to some of our audience. So we look forward to learning more about that during the Q&A session. Thank you. So let's move to Jay. Jay, your turn.
Thank you, Prof. I guess when you ask what sustainability means to me personally, so I have to share a personal story, although I did prepare some slides, we'll get to that. I think when I started my career in 2007, I remember very clearly, back then I was in a bank, and in the investment management business, we launched a climate fund. And actually that didn't do well for a few reasons. I think lack of demand could be one, but the other one, of course, is the financial crisis. Now, fast forward to today, over the last 2 years, maybe, I think green and climate change has been the talk of the world. So that is important, but I think people is also important. And before I was looking at this complex problem of people, poverty, and some of the related issues here, I actually was working on another startup, and that is a blockchain-based platform, which today is very much in climate change and green ESG data, kind of a platform for that. Now, the backstory is that as I was working on that startup, I think personally, I remember very clearly a few catalysts at the beginning of COVID that I think one of them is this a UN report that says that SDG goal number 1, poverty alleviation. I think because of COVID, the last 10 years of work and progress in that space has been wiped out. And if we don't do anything as a world to alleviate poverty in especially the frontier and developing countries, then we're not going to hit the goal by 2030. And then if you guys recall, there's a lot of reports also from newspaper that says that inequality has widened. So I think those are really catalysts that make me think that, of course, we live in a very complex and difficult world. But I think there is something about human, and there's something about people in regards to livelihood that became very important to me. And so I started looking at this space, and I realized that, it's very complex and structural. Now with that, maybe I just want to quickly share a few slides that I put together for this. And as I mentioned, the SDG goals, today I think many of the talk is about climate again, as I mentioned. But if you look at, say, goal number 1, goal number 8, about decent work and economic growth, and also I think 11, there's one about 10, reduce inequality. These are important goals. And I think that's where, for us at WeShine and myself personally, that's what we want to look at. Just want to point out, I recognize it's lunchtime, so I'm not going to show a lot of numbers. I promise this is one of the last slides with numbers and words. But I think what I want to point out here is really a problem with youth unemployment and inequality as a result of that. Many of them is in the global south, but I think in a lot of developing countries, we see that even around countries around us, Indonesia, Vietnam, Myanmar, I think youth unemployment is really a problem. And the next slide is a couple of graphs that shows that this problem with youth unemployment, I think that's going to again get worse and deteriorate because we're going to face a peak youth phenomenon, if you like. And so this shows the demographic graph, and it shows that many of the least developed countries, you actually have a lot of youth coming and getting born, and so by 2100, the year 2100, look at that fat little demographic graph we have here. And so if you think about the kind of unemployment problems and gap between skilling and job continuing, then I think that's something that we surely need to look at. So for us at WeShine, we are early stage. I think we've done quite a bit of work looking at the ecosystem. And again, I think this is as complicated as climate change in the sense that there's policy, there's supranational like United Nations, international labor organizations. You have the governments intervening, both on the supply side, meaning to how to upskill your labor force, and also on the demand side, how to create jobs. So I guess as a startup, from a startup point of view, especially at early stage, is that how do we fit ourselves into this big ecosystem, yet at the same time be able to make money from it? Because making money is the way to be sustainable, to produce impact. So just very briefly, I think what we have found for ourselves a sweet spot is very close to where we are between Indonesia, and Indonesia has a lot of those problems that I talk about. Young people who are underemployed, or some of them are unemployed. Many of them actually have very good attitude, young, they are digitally savvy, but they're not really finding the jobs that pay them properly. On the other hand, we see developed nations where employers sometimes find labor crunch, especially for entry-level work. And so for us, it's really to be the bridge between employees and jobs, and to bring them together to make better recommendations. And here I put 3 points. I think reducing labor friction is critical to what we do. And we want to enable digital migrant. What do we mean? So today, I give you some examples. I was just talking to a couple of young Indonesian employees. They are baristas, some of them are working in the fishmonger shop. But when you talk to them, they are actually trained digitally, more or less. They took video editing course, they know some graphics design, they learn graphics designing software on TikTok. And so they do know digital skills, and they have some of these skills and hard skills and soft skills. How do we then get them remote work? And I think this world has seen this grand experiment over the last 2 years, as we all know, with remote work. That has not gone either way. I don't think everyone is going back to office or everyone is going to remote, but I think that presents an opportunity for people to say, okay, how can we better optimize this remote physical kind of workforce? And I think that's where we want to come in and say, let's bridge that between the developing nations and the developed nation, where you have aging population, you have labor crunch, you have high salary that you need to pay for people. How do we optimize that? And as we are doing that, of course, we've seen a lot of these jobs and these matches going to developers, going to tech workers, going to kind of these white collar jobs. How can we include blue collar? And I think blue collar, maybe in the future of work, has to be redefined. But basically, people, as I mentioned, those people who today may be a barrister, but they are digitally savvy. How can we include them in this movement? I think that's really what we are building and what we are trying to offer and contribute to this little space towards this goal of poverty alleviation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. That's interesting. So actually, as I understand it, so WeShine started just 2 years ago. It's very small. I guess some of our audience is trying to get on this journey themselves, like a social enterprise. So I guess your experience will be very relevant to this part of our audience. What is really intriguing to me in your work, I think, is that you try to combine this peer-to-peer support. You didn't really mention too much about that in your presentation. You invite the workers to house and talk to them and treat a dinner, right? You have dinner together. You really understand who they are, and you input their information into your database. Then somehow you use this machine learning to precisely match the workers with possible employers. So I think you combine the social process with technology beautifully to create a viable business model. So in our research, we noticed many social enterprises feel it's difficult to combine the social process where you create social value and technology. So maybe I will come back to this. You can share more about how you make this happen, right, in the Q&A session. Thanks a lot. So Jay, your turn. Oh, sorry, Helga, your turn.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, really great pleasure to be here, and quite fascinating stories, I have to admit. So thanks for having me, and I will talk a little bit about what we at DBS do and how we look at sustainability, because Dr. Meng said at the right at the beginning, sustainability is quite complex. It means a lot of different things to different people. So happy to provide our perspective. And before we get there, I will also set a little bit the scene around what the context is we operate in. But before we even go there, maybe also a little bit of a personal story. I'm not showing you this slide to explain to you that the sustainability challenges that we face are complex and daunting. I would assume that most of you know there's some data points on here on climate, and climate is only one of many sustainability challenges we face. But I show you this because there are probably two key reasons why I work in the field of sustainability. And the first reason is purpose. It actually started many, many years back when I was still a young chap, long before I got gray hair. And I was very happy to hear that JC actually spent some time in Germany. I am originally from Germany. And I remember we were all teenagers at school, and there was a book that we vividly, intensely, emotionally discussed over many bottles of wine. And that was a book commissioned by the Club of Rome. It's called The Limits to Growth. And I remember how we discussed this, and there were really different fundamentalist views on this. Is this all nonsense or not? And the context in the late 80s and early 90s was that everyone was really focused on capitalism, especially after the Soviet Union came down. So it was really easy to criticize the book. But this really got us into this thinking, can we as humans actually live on this planet and just grow eternally in whatever shape or form we want, or not? That was my starting point. And 30 plus years fast forward, I have 3 kids, and I would still love my 3 kids to enjoy life in nature, and that's really driving my personal purpose in this job. So setting the scene a little bit on why it is actually important what we as a bank do at DBS. If you consider the sustainability challenges that we have, and I love the stories of JC and Jay, it is very complex and it is very daunting. And as a matter of fact, we don't have that much time to act. So what we really need, and that's the simple message of this slide, we need ecosystem change. Nobody can do it alone. Yeah, we need governments and regulators, the private sector, the finance sector, all of us embedded in the community at large to come together and tackle this. And everybody has its part to play. As a bank, one of our core tasks, it's not the only one, but a core task is the reallocation of capital, because by providing lending and financing, we are enabling impact on environmental and social matters. So the way we lend and the way we finance has a huge impact. And by allocating capital away from unsustainable activities towards more sustainable activities, we have a huge impact on this overarching ecosystem change that we really need. At DBS, we see our role as much more than just allocation of capital. We focus a lot on harnessing technologies and building ecosystems, but this is a key one. To have a little bit of a positive spin as well, the sustainability challenges are very daunting, but I wanted to very briefly say that there are also promising signs, and I would consider this an acceleration of efforts. All of you probably have heard about the COP process, so where nation states come together and discuss how to tackle sustainability challenges. What we have seen is not only an acceleration of efforts on nation state level, which you see on the right-hand side here, but also in the private sector. So more and more companies actually embrace, for example, climate with science-based pathways and targets. And these acceleration of efforts are very, very important. What is, of course, key is that we action upon it. Words are useless. We need to actually implement it. But this is quite promising. In the world of finance, the same thing. We see effectively an explosion of capital that is seeking some form of an ESG focus. What that exactly means in practice, many, many different things, but ultimately there is more and more money that wants to be allocated and spent on sustainable causes. So these are very positive things. So now ending up, what does it all mean to us at DBS? We're actually a very purpose-driven bank, and you may have seen this at the start, but our purpose is to be the best bank for a better world. And this encapsulates the latter part, how important sustainability to us is. And we have a very comprehensive approach to sustainability across 3 pillars. The first pillar is what we call responsible banking. And this is all about empowering our clients to be more sustainable. And the cornerstone piece here is our commitment to being net zero in our financed emissions, our scope 3, if you will, just throwing a jargon in there, by 2050, which for an Asia-focused bank is a fairly bold step, but it's the right thing to do, and we're working vigorously on it. So how do we lend and finance such that by 2050, the impact we create with lending and financing is net zero on climate? But it also covers other aspects, for example, like financial inclusion. We're working with the Ministry of Manpower, for example, to grant access, easy access to foreign domestic workers to use digital platforms to transfer money, as one example. Pillar 2, responsible business practices. That is now all about how we conduct ourselves as an organization. And that cuts across many different things. For example, diversity and inclusion, huge topic for us. On the environmental side, we want to walk the talk and be carbon neutral in our own operations, scope 1 and scope 2, for those that are familiar with these terms, by the end of this year, by the end of 2022. And the third pillar, impact beyond banking, here we support social enterprises. So think of businesses with a triple bottom line, as well as community causes. We have, for example, just launched an SME grant where SMEs that have cool, innovative ideas, which result in more sustainable business models, can get a grant from the DBS Foundation. And we've just had our board sign off on another 100 million Singapore dollars to really push this forward. And one thing which JC and Jay also talked a lot about is that at DBS, we want to tackle the E, environment, and S, social, concurrently. And we have to. It goes both ways. We will never have social justice without a healthy planet. And the reason for that is that climate change and the impact thereof will impact poorer communities much more than the more affluent ones. And on the flip side, we can't just turbo boost the decarbonization, for example, phasing down coal, without taking into account and supporting the families that depend on income from coal mines. So it really goes both ways. And as a consequence, the way we look at this is really tackling it concurrently. The simple message on this slide is that we will be very transparent around what we do. We have a clear roadmap on what we do when. And we see this as a collaborative tool. We are not going to go to clients and say, you run a brown business. As a consequence, we don't want to bank you. That would be not very good from a relationship point of view, but also not save the planet, because then the capital might just go into the shadow banking system. As opposed to that, we're going to go towards clients and say, can we ideate together? Can we empower you by financing and lending for you to transition to more sustainable business models? So there's going to be loads of transparency. And in the second half of this year, we've already made this public. We're going to publish white papers that will outline how we selected science-based pathways for all our sectors that we operate in. So how do we want to decarbonize them? And also 2030 interim decarbonization targets. So more to come. And we're also going to have targets on the social side. And then the last slide, sorry for the many slides. How do we now do this? It's very easy to conceptualize something on 7 PowerPoint slides. DBS has 33,000 employees. And my dream is that all of them are energized, empowered, understand the why, and are empowered to be part of the journey, irrespective of you being a receptionist or a relationship manager in the institutional banking group. And there are loads of hard and soft vectors you need to touch to get all of this out of the boardroom, down into the trenches, so that everybody runs. And there is a lot about purpose and culture. That's a bit of a soft side. There is capacity building, because we need to engage with clients in a very new way. So we need to equip our relationship managers to actually be able to do so. It's a seismic shift for them intellectually as well, to embrace all of this. And then there are also some hard factors, like how do we set the governance structures, the rules, how we go about stuff? How do we set KPIs to incentivize people? And there's also a lot of work that we currently do on ESG data and compliance. So loads of stuff, ultimately with the idea being that we embed sustainability into everything we do to create the biggest possible impact. Thanks, Dr. Meng. Back to you.
Thank you, Helga. That's a lot of information. So as I can see, a DBS sustainability work is all around. So it's about your core products and services, it's about your daily operations, and it's about a whole range of different stakeholders. So I guess as a chief sustainability officer, it must be very challenging to deliver this message throughout the organization and hold everyone together to keep working on this continuously, right? So I'm really curious about your reflections on, how do you make it work, make the message work, or make this agenda work. But before I put out my question, so I will read this question at the later. Let's take a look at the feedback from the audience, because we are receiving a lot of questions from the audience. So I want to start with a question by Damini, right? This is a question to all three panelists. It said, the first step, how to identify ESG priorities for your organization and get started on this journey, right? As I guess to entrepreneurs is about how you get started with your purpose, right? So what about we start with Jiao Cai, just some response to this question from everyone.
Sure. I think from us, our perspective is relatively simple, right? Just a fun fact, like going back to the name of TreeDots, is actually just mean three insignificant individual like dots trying to make a big impact. So of course we pick the impact that we think that we can deliver and we think that we can solve. That's why a lot of people always ask us, oh, you're into food waste, why not go into plastic to prevent plastic from supermarkets, trying to reduce plastic waste. But there's a lot of things that can be done. We find that being targeted and focused on one that we have the highest likelihood of success would be the best choice. So I think given our background, which we are in finance, and we have related friends that are in the F&B scene, so food itself seems like the one that we can likely solve. And that's kind of like how we picked it, because we just base it on a very mathematical success rate.
Jay?
I guess I'll answer it from two perspectives. One is if you're starting a new business like I am now, and one perhaps my personal view on a big company like say DBS. So starting with, if you're starting a new company or new business, my personal view is that this term called social enterprise, I'm not sure what to think of it, because I think that if done well, all businesses should be social in nature. So then you don't need to call someone a social enterprise or whatnot. And if you are designing a new revenue model, a new business model, a new value add to your customer, how about thinking from the beginning how to input impact, positive impact that is, into that entire model? So yeah, I think anyone who's starting a new business, if they're thinking along this line, then I think that's something that I would really very aligned to my thinking. Now, from a big company perspective, this is my personal view. I've never led such a role in a big company, but I think the difficulty is then that you can't really do what I was talking about earlier on, whereby you have the business that is incorporated. Let's say you're a cigarette company, it's kind of hard to do that. Then I think perhaps is really looking at what is one area of ESG and sustainability that can be close to my current business model. And of course, many of the things that DBS has done is related to those concepts. So I think that's how I would share my view on this topic.
So before we hear from Helga, so Jay, I just want to have a very quick follow-up question, because in your case, it looks to me it's not only about your idea about how to, solve a social problem, but also you already have expertise in technology, your friends, and also your connection with the government, with the Ministry of human power and etc. So is that true that all these factors come together to make you believe this is doable?
I think those are very important. But I guess that principle applies to everything else. I guess having more resources, be it knowledge, connections, that definitely helped. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Helga.
Yeah, thanks. I want to reflect a little bit on what Jay just said, because that's actually very powerful. And it brings up the question around what is the purpose of a company in society? So because Jay said social entrepreneurship and should we all be social, and I probably couldn't agree more. But I think we are currently in a fundamental shift. So very often people thought about a company's purpose is to generate shareholder value. And then on top of that, maybe we cover a little bit ESG. But isn't the purpose now moving towards we have a certain role in society to play to actually enable a sustainable society? And by doing so, hopefully we also generate profits, because if a company is not profitable, it will also not be able to create impact. But this double materiality, your role in society, is actually currently really shifting. And that's really very, very powerful. And if the world was already, like Jay said, in which I agree should be the case, that would be fantastic. But I think we're currently in a transition phase where we need to also empower people to think about this so-called double materiality. What is actually my impact? And there are so many models, for example, the 4 capitals now, right? So we're moving beyond just focusing on financial capital and also look at human capital, social capital, nature capital. So what Jay said is actually very powerful. And again, comes back to what's actually the purpose of all of this.
And thank you. And we have this question from Ellen, and this is to Jia Cai. Ellen said, she saw some bakery shops throwing unsold bread or pastries into black plastic bag or bin bag. So she wonders, how would the TreeDots help F&B in unsold perishable goods? So what's exactly the model on this?
Yep. I think a lot of people, I think thanks for Ellen for the question. Firstly, a lot of people has the same understanding that is the kind of products that we work with. Unfortunately, we are a little bit more upstream. There are different. The good thing is there are different startups in the entire F&B sustainability scene where we are all working on different parts of the supply chain. So it's almost like reuse, reduce, recycle. We are actually at the reuse portion where goods at further upstream, where we're talking about first-hand importers, slaughterhouses, they have unsold inventories that is still perfectly fine, but they are throwing away such products. So unfortunately for your case in like retail store food that is maybe at the end of the day, they have to throw it away in a black plastic bag. We don't deal with that, particularly because there is risk of food safety. We are not able to 100% guarantee that the food is safe for consumption in such a scenario. For us, we are working more on the upstream side of things where, for instance, we have suppliers that typically throw off about, before the chickens here, right? Typically they throw off about 7 tons of fresh chicken on a daily basis. The main reason is just because they slaughter chickens and it comes in different sizes. So they just don't have the demand for all these chickens, and it's just part of their natural business to throw away such chickens. So that is essentially what we do, and we take such chickens to redistribute to other food businesses like restaurants, like cafes, where they don't mind like the smaller size chicken or the oversized chickens. So it's a different side of the problem that we deal with. Of course, when such companies reach out to us, even though we are not able to help them directly, we also would refer them to the other startups that we know in the scene so that something can be done. And I think all of us in the scene is all contributing in one way or another.
Thank you. And also, actually, there's a lot of interviews and internet articles about your model. So I suggest the audience to take a look at it, and I think they can get in touch directly with you if they have further questions, right? Thank you. And this question from Selman, I think to all of the panelists. And this kind of about personal experience. It said, doing business for social good, but involves some kind of personal change, personal life cost. right? So what's your experiences on this? How do you overcome if there will be some barriers in terms of personal cost or personal change, because we're trying to do business for social good, right? So shall we start from Helga? Your experience, huge transition from finance to sustainability, right?
I probably just would like to clarify, is that question related to me and how I went through that journey, or is it around my perception, what's happening outside of myself and how I interact in enterprises?
I guess it's about your personal life experience.
Okay. Well, that is very easy for me to answer, because I am indeed a very purpose-driven person, and I'm also always very excited to embrace new things. That's just who I am. So I have a tendency of getting bored if I do the same thing for too long. So to me, making a switch, it's not even a huge switch given my personal history and what I've done within banking, but doing that switch was not really very difficult. As a matter of fact, I perceive it as a complete privilege to actually be allowed every day to spend all my energy and everything that I have on environmental and social matters. I mean, could it be a more beautiful job and purpose? So for me personally, it hasn't really been a big step at all.
Okay, what about Jay?
I guess the word purpose is the same for me. So it hasn't been, so when I was much younger, I was different from Helga, whereby I didn't really care, about social. But I think as I grew older, I think there were events in life that made me had a different worldview, put it this way. And then purpose became so important. So I think I don't know how to answer the question in particular, but I'll just say that purpose is what drives. And then to the cost, I'm also not exactly sure what's the context, but I just answer it from, say, from a global citizen point of view. I guess the cost to me is that so I recycle more, because when we lived in the UK with my family, we had to recycle. Here we don't really have to; it's not compulsory. But we pick up these habits, and it's just inconvenience, and we bring more sort of reusable things, and that is kind of the little cost, and that's inconvenience. However, I think I just had another luncheon with NTU, and I think during that luncheon, I was asking what are the primary factors for climate change? What does matter? And it seems like these individual decisions, while they are good, it doesn't really matter. So they are telling me it's the coal mine, it's perhaps the aeroplanes in the air and these type of things. So I don't know whether I'm answering the question, but these are my perspectives.
Thank you. Dasai, anything to add?
Actually, for me, I think it takes three parties for a change to happen, right? The government, the organization, and individual. Personally, I've been through such a change. Like I said, I went to Germany for exchange, right? I went there as a very typical Singaporean. Those that will take the plastic bags at the supermarkets and stuff like that, right? I don't really care about sustainability. And to me, it's always a thought of like, oh man, this is going to be hard to implement. How can we live with not having like plastic bags or like buying unsold inventories, etc. But when you are in Germany itself, right, the culture there is so strong, and the people there truly believe it, that it actually spreads to you almost immediately. I think I make that switch almost on the first day itself, because I remember I was at the supermarket, I was trying to buy something, and I asked for a plastic bag, and I think the entire supermarket just turned and stared at me. So ever since that day, I would just carry a backpack to the supermarkets, and it's just such a norm. And to me, I see the impact because the government make it as an emphasis on sustainability. The organizations buy into the idea, and they carry out the vision of the government, and the people will slowly follow suit as well. So the mindset is hard to change for an individual, but if all three parties collaborate and push for this ideology, changes can happen really quickly. And it's really more of a inner fear that you are feeling. But when you're faced with it, it's not really as scary as it is.
Right. So this question from Charlene, I think this is also something I curious about. This to Helga. So Helga, do you experience any pushback or resistance from internal stakeholders when you try to implement your initiative?
Very, very nice question. Let me maybe frame first. So my experience at DBS overall is that there is a humongous amount of positive energy towards sustainability. There is actually a strong sense of culture. And one of the core reasons may also be our very visionary leader. He sets the tone from the top. He's an amazing individual, and he's very visionary on the digital front, and he's also very visionary on the sustainability front. So by and large, I have not yet come across a significant pushback. However, there are probably two areas. One is just some people are generally maybe not as willing to change. And we are currently going through a fairly significant change. Yeah, the way we run our business, the way we interact with clients, it's very, very new. So we are asking people to adapt. So it's not necessarily pushback against sustainability, but it's a very fundamental change to the way you do your everyday work. And absolutely, there are some people who are easy about change and there are others who are not, but it's not necessarily the sustainability part. The second element is, and that is not an observation I have necessarily within DBS, it's really very broadly, because I talk also to hundreds of clients, hundreds of peers and so on. And very often there is a perception that you either are commercial and generate profit, or you do sustainability. And that's a mindset that we are really trying to change, because we want to get the point across that by doing the right thing, you can actually be also very profitable. You embrace sustainability, which very often for companies, and I could go into many, many details of our clients, by embracing sustainability, they actually become more innovative in their products and services. And as a consequence, actually better companies. And they slowly understand it's not a trade-off, it's not a dilemma, it's self-enforcing. But that is something that has nothing to do with DBS. That's something I observe in my day-to-day interactions with many people. And this mindset is slowly changing.
Well, that's exactly one of the major challenges I heard again and again from the people. They just have different priorities, right? It's bounded by the metric system, performance evaluation system, job description. So maybe a quick follow-up question. So how's it going when you try to address this issue to raise people's awareness to get people on board?
That is to me?
Yeah, for you. So, I mean, yes.
I mean, look, it's many levers, right? The last slide that I showed you so many different things that we do, right? There is one element of capacity building, and capacity building is also a little bit about capturing the hearts of people. It's not just the hard, rotten technical knowledge on data and modeling. It's also capturing the hearts, understanding the why. So capacity building is very, very important. And you can get this awfully wrong if you don't set the context and the why. And then there are many other things, as I mentioned, right? Setting KPIs. Indeed, as you just say, everybody still also wants to earn money. Yeah, we're living in Singapore in a fairly expensive city. So people still want to earn money. So setting KPIs is very important. In our group scorecard, sustainability is expressly mentioned. So our group scorecard is effectively the template for setting KPIs. So that also sets it. So the long and short of it is, it's a continuous journey. It's the way we communicate. Is really on a continuous basis, explaining to a relationship manager that by embracing sustainability, she or he might get closer to a client and actually be able to deliver a better service to the client. That's what resonates with them. So it's a journey, multiple steps, and it's not a one solution for this fairly complex topic, to be honest.
And what you said also addresses another question we have here. So would you like to add a little more to this? This is from Adam. It said to incentivize employees to participate in ESG as sustainability. Can you share one example of a shared KPI that is most well received and create the biggest impact?
Yeah, look, this now would become a really big discussion, because DBS is a very unique organization in the way that we are actually organizing ourselves very much horizontally. And that might sound a bit weird or not very clear, but a traditional organization has verticals. There's, for example, a front office unit, there is risk, there's operations, then there's technology or whatever it might be. It's very vertically organized, and as a consequence, you're very often potentially efficient maybe, but they are very often also silos. So we are actually fundamentally changing the way we go about business, which has nothing to do with sustainability. This is even bigger, and organize ourselves horizontally. So what is the outcome that we want to accomplish? For example, we want to develop a certain product in consumer banking. So the outcome is a certain service to a client. And then you create a squad across all these verticals that work together. So the technology person doesn't get shouted at by the front office person telling him, hey, this is what you need to do. No, the technology person is an integral part of the squad. So shared KPIs for us are a huge topic way above sustainability. And the short answer is very complicated to measure. We're a very data-driven organization, and we're trying to change our IT systems, by the way, to have the data in the systems. Not easy, but we want to indeed address this head on.
Thank you. Well, the next question to all panelists, right? So how would you recommend to the teenagers to prepare themselves to make them employable in the future ESG companies? Right. So what about we start with Jiao Cai?
I think this is a tough question. I feel that in general, this might be a sweeping statement, but I think in general, the younger generations, especially teenagers, they are more aware of social problems about the whole climate change, and you guys are aware of what is needed to be done. So being very sensitive to such topics, knowing that your action can work is already a very big part to making you employable in an ESG company, because everything starts small, right? If you don't truly believe in it, which is a challenge that we see in generally the older employees or the older generations, right? It is very hard for you to implement anything. We can implement things, company cultural things like we don't use like plastic forks. We bring your own disposal. Bring your own like food containers. But if you don't believe it, you will not practice it, and such negativity actually spreads. So when we are speaking to our employees and trying to assess them whether they are a good fit for the organization, it's really the motivation and the thought process and the small little things that you do on your daily lives, and that gives us a lot of insights into how deep you buy into this whole sustainability movement, and how you will really carry it through your life and in the workplace and in your decisions for the organization. So I'm not sure whether that answered the question.
Thank you. Jay?
I guess to make teenagers employable in so-called future ESG, so what comes to mind is that it's probably getting the teenagers to be aware and to be passionate about this topic, because I don't think there's any hard skills that you probably need to like really go through like a degree in ESG, you know, to make yourself employable. So I guess it's more of just being passionate about that. And how to make someone passionate, I think it goes back to the multi-party in a country or in the culture. So I think it's more of that, just a passion, and to showcase that I'm actually passionate about this.
Thank you. So Helga, you have 3 kids, right? So you have some first-hand experience on this.
Yeah, but look, I couldn't agree more with JC and Jay, right? I mean, let's not talk about technical skills, because by the time these teenagers hit the labor market, they're going to be turned upside down 5 times. So it all starts with purpose indeed. I've been now working for 24 years. This is why I have gray hair. 24 years. If I had not had joy in what I do, I would have run nuts. So we can't tell you ESG is your thing. You need to discover this intrinsically in yourself. If this is something that fulfills you, then go for it. In my humble view, globally, education systems utterly fail at one basic principle. They're all fairly good at transporting information into you, but they utterly fail at explaining why it is so awesome to learn, why it is so joyful, what's the purpose in all of this. I have rarely seen for example, schools focusing on that. So just find your purpose, right? For example, at the moment, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, they have established 12 technical skills in finance that you should have if you want to work in sustainable finance. In 2 years' time, it's going to look completely different. So it's your mindset, how you go about things, but just make sure that you like it. And by the way, you as a human being will also change 20 times. So it's nothing is set in stone, right? Have an open mind, find your inner purpose. I know this sounds extremely cliche, but I would tell my kids, do what you really like to do.
Right. So Helga, I guess the next question, a little bit technical, and it's to you. It's from Ashwini. He asked several questions. I would like to focus on the first one. So how does the bank lending group use ESG framework for setting financing costs and setting financing criteria compared to non-ESG way of lending?
Okay, that's a very excellent question. Actually, all banks globally are working on this. So let's start simplistically. What do we want to accomplish? What's our purpose? There are many environmental and social matters. If I zoom into climate as part of the E, we want to decarbonize, and we want to do this very, very fast. So first and foremost, I want to establish this context, because what we do is really go out to our clients and strategize together. How can we empower them to change their business models, to decarbonize, align with science-based pathways? That is absolutely critical. That's the dot at the horizon. Now, to answer it head on, at the moment, there is no statistical model in any bank that can prove that sustainable activities have a lower, and now I'm going to be very technical, lower probability of default or loss given default than non-sustainable activities. No bank in the world has this. Everyone works on data. So at the moment, we are more on a principles-based. We use as much data as we can. And of course, we as DBS, as a matter of fact, are subsidizing many times sustainable financings by offering lower interest rates, but not because we have the perfect model that shows statistically it's a better credit, because we want to do it, because that's our dot at the horizon. As years pass by, hopefully there is going to be a differentiation based on data. And then you can maybe argue with the MAS, and I'm going to sit there at the board meeting in about 2 weeks' time, that we might change risk weightings and all these types of things. At the moment, it's mathematically very difficult. So you need to take some choices based on the limited data set that you have.
Wonderful. And this question to Jia Cai, kind of interesting. It's from Rahul. So Singaporeans love fried food, which means a lot of cooking oil will be discarded. But this oil can be used for aircraft fuel after processing it as sustainable aviation fuel. So Jia Cai, are you seeing any action in this field?
I think this is one of many examples of things or efforts that is trying to repurpose, especially products that can be resold or reused, right? The actions is there. I mean, in terms of the startup scene, I think there's a lot of startup trying to look into very creative space of how to utilize this used food products or unconsumable food products. But I think the bigger challenge that we are facing is still that the industry, at least in the food industry, is still run by a lot of incumbents, and they don't see such action of donating their products for greater use as being a positive thing. Instead, they try to take advantage of it, and they will try to, when they realize that there's demand for such a product, they try to slap a price to it, and it cripples the entire model. And I think that is one of the biggest barriers to entry that we are seeing right now. Not just using this example, we used to have a relatively close startup that worked with us that use, I think, those barks and stuff to repurpose food waste into fertilizers and various other stuff, right? Their challenge is also the same, where they are just not getting enough donation because everyone want to monetize on it, and the economics just doesn't make sense at all. And I think increasingly we are seeing this change, but at least in the Southeast Asia context, I would think that this will only come in at least another maybe 3 to 5 years time, where people are more mature, and especially the second generations are taking over the businesses, and they are making more wise decision that is more positive towards ESG.
Right, my colleagues reminded me we have time for one more question. So I'd like to pick this one. This is actually to everyone. So see if you have a brief response to this. This is about the difference between Asia and Europe. You know, Asia is vulnerable to ESG risk. But why the case that Europe is more active on this? Back to Jiachai's example, you said in Germany, people stare at you if you ask for plastic bags. So do you see this difference in terms of awareness of sustainability between different parts of the world, especially between Europe and Asia? Do you see that? And how do we understand this? So maybe Jiachai, start from you.
Sure. Actually, this is a question that I pondered for quite a while. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but it's just my personal take on this, right? Is that every country actually go through different phases of growth, and it will be the economical boost, and then more towards appreciation of music and art and social problems. And it's also like the developing towards the developed country. And in Southeast Asia context, even in Singapore, we are still moving towards, we are still not like a fully developed country, whereas in the European counterparts, they are ahead of us in terms of that. And you can see this not just in terms of the like the understanding or awareness of social problems, but like I say, even in the music appreciation, the art scene, the cultural scene, they are more advanced for sure. But you can see that Singapore itself is still picking up. And even in recent years, you can start seeing that we gain a lot more appreciation for music and arts, and also more aware of social problems. And I think it's just a natural progression where if the country is still in a developing state, individuals are more concerned with their own survival and finances than big world problems like climate change and stuff like that. So it takes time to change, but we will get there. And I think right now it's just how do we accelerate it so that we can catch up to the counterparts quick enough.
Thank you. Jay?
I agree with Jiachai, and I think every country is unique. Even in Asia, I don't think that all Asia behave a certain way. Like Asia countries, like to me personally, I think Taiwan is really, you know, like they really take this seriously. Plastic bags and all. But I think the bigger point is that, as related to what Jiachai was saying, countries go through different growth and different development. But I think also from a human behavior point of view, for example, you know, maybe the what do we call it, the Maslow hierarchy, you know, of needs. If you struggle with your basic needs, I think the last thing on your mind is really climate or anything like that. And I'll just take one example that comes to my mind. Maybe burning of forest to clear the vegetation and things like that. I mean, so it's a trade-off, and it's a human behavior thing that I think as a nation is really complex. But I think there are many trade-offs and challenges that kind of make different countries behave differently. Yeah. So, but that's a very good question and a difficult one.
Thank you. So Helga, you live in two worlds. So what's your experience?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant question, and I fully agree with JC and Jay, but I actually don't think it's that difficult. I think the economic factor is dominating here. And in layman's terms, in one sector, the Western world has become rich by polluting the world. That's just the simple truth. If you look up the IPCC report, and the latest one just came out 2 months ago, they actually put a number to it. 41% of the carbon emissions that are currently in the atmosphere have been generated by North America and Europe, 41%. If you then translate this into a per capita number, it looks horribly skewed towards North America and Europe. And they've leveraged this, of course, in the industrialization phase, etc., to become very rich. And then you are in a very luxurious position, precisely as Jay and JC said, in a very luxurious position to think about this. If you walk down the streets in Central Java, the communities might simply have very different problems on their hand, as opposed to a community in the outskirts of Amsterdam. That's a simple truth. So this is why the world is fairly complex, and this is also why these processes called COP are so complex, because we are in a situation where everybody has a certain starting position. So it's very, very complex. I think in the end of the day, let's keep our heads up in Asia. I think there is a positive momentum, and we just have to continue and play our part. But in Asia, the social element, insanely important, and we need to take that into account as well.
Thank you. So I can see actually more insights coming out of here, but it's time to wrap it up. So I want to say thank you to this great panel and to our audience for your participation. This webinar is part of NBS lab knowledge series of webinars, and is presented every month. So please do look out for upcoming webinars and stay connected with NBS via social media. So and before you leave, please take 1 minute to to complete our quick survey about this webinar. All right. So thank you very much. I hope to see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.